When we started this journey, we didn't intend to go and build a piece of IP. We started off with a technical challenge, which kind of goes towards the experiment name. We thought, and I say we, Simon thought he had a solution to our technical challenge, went away on a weekend, came back and said, I think this is what we need to do. And then we went and convinced Aid and Matt up in the crowd there that this is the path that we need to take to get to a solution to our technical problem. After a bit of time of using the product, we realized that actually what we built was something much more flexible and something we could do something much more with. So we started to think about how can we change the way we approach our services, our offerings, and really looking at these challenges that we had in the business at the time. One of the key ones being what was previously a big strength from our managed services of having long contracts with our suppliers, suddenly in this new era of AI means we have to change rapidly. We can't do that when we're stuck in a contract with a supplier for 4 years who might not want to change their product in that way. Second part is many of you, our customers, need that empowerment in that environment to be able to take control of your own decisions. And we want to be there to help you with that flexibility. But also, we have a number of, obviously, competitor challenges whereby many of them, with significant budgets, are taking bets on AI and reducing their prices significantly. We wanted to be able to do that to support you as customers, to support our business for growth, but do it in a sustainable manner so that we don't suddenly get 2 years down the line and we're not able to deliver what we've agreed to deliver. That meant we had a massive opportunity in our eyes to start to take control of our destiny from a technology perspective. And the way we did that firstly is we started to look at the open source market, which is now fledgling in terms of tools and capabilities out there. We steer very predominantly towards enterprise open source, whereby we have an open license, we can use it and we can drive that capability. But if there is a significant problem or challenge we're not able to resolve, we can still call on that enterprise support and model. We've also created a single converged platform. So we're utilizing a lot of open source, but we have also got licensed providers of software in certain areas. All of that is interconnected by effectively AIOps Nova, which is the glue that sits in between that. And what we wanted to make sure is it was completely flexible. We didn't want to one day choose a product and then 2 weeks later someone's gone and vibe coded the best product on the market and we're suddenly behind. We want to be able to switch that out very quickly. And there's been about 4 or 5 instances where we've been able to do that over the last 12 months, where we've seen that it could be a database technology or an AI technology that we want to scoop out what we used to have and put a new one in. Based on our framework, we can now do that quite quickly. Sometimes even in a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks. And finally, what we wanted to make sure of is we're anchoring to outcomes. And what that means is where we have vendors in the market who are looking at building a technology to drive a solution, we're looking to offer services to our customers. And this product is about how do we enhance those services? How do we make things better within the world that we're supporting? And what does that mean?
Yeah, so then back 2.5 years ago, that challenge, we decided to build out AIOps. So we started off with about 3 developers, and from there, it took about 4 months for us to build and release the initial capability. The initial capability was event management, processing alarms, processing alerts. And from there, it skyrocketed rapidly. We started getting more and more demand, more requirements. We've gone from the first capability now up to 15 plus capabilities. And through that then, as part of that, we did encounter challenges. So it wasn't technology challenges or scaling the product. It was development challenges. We couldn't deliver and build things quick enough. And there's a couple of simple answers to that one. Basically, DevOps. We worked with other areas in CGI, and we aligned ourselves to the DevOps way of life, really. And the second was automation. We really, really automated everything that we did. So through that then, we got recognized as IP. I kind of see that as a reward, really, because it recognized all the success we've been doing with our clients, but also because of IP, we can bring that to our clients now directly. And from that then, after those 15 capabilities, when I want to move to a place where we can really enable citizen development, so that's where areas in CGI can contribute outside of the core AIOps team to build out, deliver, and utilize. And through that, it'll be things like enabling low-code, no-code UIs to build AI agents or to build connectors, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where we're moving to now.
Thanks, Simon. And what we're finding, so obviously when we started this journey, it was very much a solution to an infrastructure problem. We have a lot of events and alerts causing us outages, and we want to reduce those events and alerts while preventing outages at the same time. As we grew that out over the period with our customers and our account teams, we've started to change the way in which we tell this story. So this slide here, I'm not going to go through every single box on the board, but this slide here is all around how do we have that conversation that says, well, we start the journey with our managed service offering and remove the noise. So where we can, reduce the amount of events that we're seeing, enable our engineers to focus on those higher complexity issues. Once we're in that position and we've got less events to deal with, less issues to deal with, how do we then start to enable those engineers to fix the things that they have to fix quicker? So how do we make sure that they've got the tools at their disposal to really quickly drive reduction in those issues and impact our clients? And that list of tools in the middle are those that we can utilize in any scenario really to drive a reduction in that effort for engineers. Oops. And then finally, from an evolved perspective, when we're in that position where our engineers know what they're looking at and how they're fixing it in a much more informed manner, and we've got less events to deal with and less issues to deal with, we can start to really focus on how do we enable the client's business? How do we drive more around the outcomes the business requires? Faster, better, cheaper, whatever that might be. Now, to bring that to life a little bit, if you imagine 20 years ago as an engineer, you're probably receiving an alert that says, oh, there's a high CPU or a high memory or something infrastructure related. You look at it and you go, okay, cool, let me see how I can fix that. And suddenly it drops and you go, it's fine, sorted. What we're moving much more towards now is what's the impact of the business immediately. So this here is a demonstration portal where we're showing you an overview of our clients. So list of our clients, what services we're offering at a high level, whether there's any current issue, and then being able to drill into each client. And for every single engineer who logs in, they'll be able to see, well, what are we actually offering for that client? So bringing the engineer much more closer to the business. But also, what are we able to, who have we got, that works on that client? Who do we need to contact if there's an issue? What's the health overall of that client right now? What are the assets that we currently look after for that client? And this adaptively being able to tell us what we need to go and look at and being able to drill into those issues. So, for example, what incidents are currently active? Or being able to drill into that asset estate and being able to see what's the breakdown? What type of assets does this customer have? Where are they? What environments do they sit in? I mean, being able to really have that picture at a glance very quickly, but also starting to look at, well, what are the service offerings that CGI are providing to that customer? What are the applications we look after for that customer? How does that impact on their business? And then starting to drive the real AI part of what are the observations that we're currently seeing that we might want to start doing an investigation around. So really understanding what are the things we need to look at today. So a dynamic list that changes consistently, which we can then start to do an investigation and start to understand what's the root cause, what do we need to change, how are we going to do that, and starting to assist our engineers through that process to say, we might want to create a problem ticket, and here's all the information already pre-populated, which will come up and show you shortly. There's also on the bottom right-hand side an investigation agent, and what that agent is there for, and this is an agent that consists kind of across the portal, is the ability for us to communicate with the AI agent, work through our tool sets that sit in that back end to drive further investigations, take actions, or whatever we need to do for that. So here's an example of where we've pre-populated, just needs to be validated, and then it can be sent out to the system for a problem ticket to be created. And the same will happen if we want to create an automation or make a change or whatever it might be. What we also want to be able to do is make it a lot easier from a business perspective for our service management communities to understand what's going on under the hood. So Simon's going to show you some more detailed kind of back-end engineer views. This is more the business view of that, of we've received an event, what did it say when it came in? What have we done with it since then? So this is the audit trail of that event where it said there was an issue with the payment system, there was no current blackout, it's not related to a flood, we tried self-healing, it didn't work. We can look at the history, understand roughly what happened in that space. We then pass through and it's not anomalous. There is a support override based on the work we've already done with the self-healing. We can say, well, actually, our digital command center isn't going to be able to do anything with this. It needs to go directly to the payments team. And then finally, the real AI overview here to say, here's the summary of why I need you, engineer, to go and look at this. And by the way, there might be some historic incidents you can go and look at, but also here's a summary of the actions you might want to take. And again, there's a much more detailed view of that in what Simon will show you. And then finally, from a customer perspective, as that control happens, you're moving towards a SIAM and a multi-supplier environment, we can help you pull that together with this supplier dashboard to be able to see all the data points in a single location to understand what's going on with all those suppliers and how performant each one is or where your risks exist within that environment.
Yeah, so with AIOps, we look at it as anything in, anything out kind of model, really. So this example now on the screen is the event management piece, our first capability. So this particular example is around our event-driven architecture. So each box on the left represents our microservice apps, and each app then has a function, a purpose, processes the event, and passes it on to the next application. So the first boxes in this are all about noise reduction. They're rule-based, so they make decisions based on rules. How noisy is something? Should I reduce it? Can I correlate it to other events? How do I reduce the overall noise that comes through the system? And all of these are essentially to achieve an outcome where we want to reduce that noise coming in so that when if an engineer needs a ticket to look at and investigate, he either has as much information as available as possible, or we've done as much automation and efficiency as we can before that. So now in the example at the moment now is hit self-healing. So in this use case, it's failed for the purposes of the demo, but it's still giving us diagnostics and enrichment information that we can then later use if required. And as it's flowing through, it's now doing anomaly detection. So anomaly detection then is using trending and patterns to decide, has the event coming through the system, do I normally see it? Is it user impacting? It answers those sorts of questions. And then through that, then the ticket is created, and then flashing on the screen in a minute will be kind of the AI enrichment. So the way that we use, because people ask, where is AI in AIOps? So for us, we use AI as an assistant, really, to help us make decisions, to take actions. So in this case, it's done things like corrective RAG, so it's taken things from our knowledge base, and it's tried to identify which knowledge will help the engineer. It's taken input from the self-healing, so it's tried to identify next steps based on what the self-healing returned, and then all of this then is available to the engineer so that they can more quickly return the service. So the next example then, again, this kind of anything in, anything out model, this one is particularly focusing on observability, so application login, metrics, telemetry data. So once data is in the system, this is then about enabling AI agents to have that data to then produce recommendations. So I have a number of agents that look at the data that's come in, they try to identify that. In this case, it's a coding recommendation. So we found logs against an app. This agent is looking for bugs in apps, so it's generated a summary. It uses our SDLC, so it tries to identify what changes it should make based on that, what it's allowed to do. And then it's through then the login errors, it's generated a coding changes and pushed it through our GitLab and all of our development processes. In this case, we got a guardrail, so a testing pipeline, which has failed. So the agents attempted to make a change, but it's not been able to take it any further because it didn't pass our guardrails. And through this, then, it's followed in our case, our GitLab process has created all the branches, all the code, all the updates, and we can see and evidence the changes and what it's been doing. So this is quite powerful, really, because think of it that it's enabling us to connect data with agents. It's not just about copy and pasting something from one tool to another and getting the AI output and then putting it back again. It's about connecting it all together, but keeping a human in the loop in that it's generated a recommendation. I can decide for it to go off to the agent. The agent then does its bit then under its guardrails, and after that then we can further decide how to proceed. So that is the context for this one.
Thanks, Simon. So just finally, a few numbers in terms of, we've been doing this around about 2 years now, as you saw on the timeline page. We are now deployed across 70 of our customers from a CGI perspective, and some really big numbers in that. So we've, in a 12-month period, we saw just over 1 million events and only created 300,000 incidents. And that's still a huge amount of incidents, and we're still obviously working very hard to try and find more opportunities to drive that down. But if we hadn't done this, we'd be seeing those 70% or 700,000 incidents. And then from a financial perspective, throughout this program, it's effectively washing its own face. So we are able to make efficiencies through licenses, through tooling, through hosting, through various efficiencies, and we're able to reinvest that into the product to keep growing and moving forward to make this a much better proposition for us and for our customers.
Well done.